been a fan of yours for quite some time, right? But I noticed with all the people you've spoken to, men, women all over the world, and I was thinking, I'm probably the oldest guy you're going to talk to.
Maybe.
I'm 46, and I was like, okay, I mean, I understand you're talking to the younger crowd, and, you know, they're the big shows and all that, but I'm probably the oldest guy.
So that's very, you know what, it's very likely, yeah. There's not many guys in like your kind of age bracket that tend to do like podcasts and shows and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's it all happened by accident, but I'm glad it happened because, again, it's a cool thing to put a good message out there and to coach people. And just like you, one reason I want to reach out to you, Stirling, is that I definitely appreciate what you're doing. There's a lot of young men out there who have no male role model. They grew up with single mother households, no dads, and there is no masculinity out there. And I appreciate genuine men like you who are out there putting a good message and putting out a good word to give them guidance, because I'm sure you can attest to this. There's a lot of youth out there that are lost and confused.
Yeah, I think definitely. And, you know, I kind of have a bit of a bone to pick with, I guess you'd say like the baby boomer generation. Yeah. Personally, I think that's kind of what started it. If we look back through time, right? Like, yeah, you have the greatest generation ever. That was like, you know, the guys who went through basically like World War I, World War II. And then all their kids came out of that being the baby boomers. And that's when like all the kind of indoctrination systems that we have kind of set in stone today, like into the public education system, basically getting people used to clocking in and out of a factory, you know, not teaching them like super practical real world skills like how to do your taxes, or more importantly, how to pay less taxes, for example. That'd be a very useful bit of curriculum in a high school, you know, education system. But we don't get taught that kind of stuff because the whole thing is engineered to try and turn people into convenient wage slaves and tax slaves, right? And that all started really after the Second World War, and it started with the baby boom generation, and then it kind of got perfected through like Gen X, millennials, and now Gen Z. Those, like the baby boom generation, their parents were absolutely amazing. Like the people who brought them into the world were absolutely incredible people. Very, very obviously they went to war, you know, hardworking, disciplined, you know, went through hell and back again. And I think that generation of parents that, you know, I had, or, you know, Gen X's had, kind of took a lot of stuff for granted, and they took for granted in particular the role that being surrounded by other men and growing up around other men has on you as a man. I think I believe I read this in No More Mr. Nice Guy. I think it was the book where I was first kind of introduced to this idea. Like that generation, the baby boom generation, most of them still grew up on like farms. The vast majority of them didn't grow up in cities. They grew up in smaller communities, and they grew up with their dad, their uncles, and their granddads teaching them about the world on a day-to-day basis, teaching them how to be a man, being surrounded by other men, and kind of through osmosis learning those inherently like what we would call masculine values and masculine ways of operating with other men and going throughout the world, taking responsibility, not letting emotions, you know, take control of yourself. And then as we progressed towards like more urbanized societies in the last couple of generations, because more and more people are flooding into the cities or growing up in cities, what happens is the job of like raising young boys and turning boys into men has now been handed off to women in the form of primary school teachers, you know, high school teachers, middle school teachers, and these kind of things. And so like there's been a massive shift in like who is defining the way that boys turn into men. And right now, unfortunately, it's the public education system. Yeah, that too. And there's a lot of influences out there that can really get a young man to change and have an idea what a man is. And I think growing up as a Gen Xer, it was very clear on what a man was. A man was a man. There was no question about toxic masculinity. You knew the attributes of what it took to be a man. And I guess I'm fortunate to have had a father my entire life. He just recently passed last year, so that was really hard. But he taught me. No, thanks, man. But he taught me right from wrong and what it took to be a man of character, be a man that people look up to, aspire to, and be the head of a household. So I had all that. And when I see young kids now, I don't see that instilled in them. I see a lot of men who
who, one, don't know what it takes to be man, what is masculinity, and I think they are raised on their phones instead of having a father. They're looking at their phones, and their phones are influencing what a man should do. I mean, hell, there's guys who don't even want to approach women nowadays at bars, and like, why? Well, she may think I'm a creep. Well, like, did that happen to you, or did you just hear that story on your phone? And they're like, well, that's what they'll do. I'm like, how do you know that? Go and experience it for yourself. So you're right. I think there's just a lack of leadership and mentors out there. And again, that's why I wanted to reach out to you and talk to you, because I think you're doing a good thing, man. And I appreciate with the history that you're doing. And again, for those who don't know, introduce yourself, man. Everyone knows who you are, but go ahead and tell a summary of who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So not probably like the most credible, like not the most kosher, I should say, background for talking to young men about like what's appropriate and what's masculine and stuff. But yeah. I used to be I'm a retired porn star. I'm an award-winning retired porn star. I was also a former high-class male companion. Used to get paid by wealthy business ladies to take them out on romantic dates and things like that.
Nice.
Ran a few businesses prior to that, like a sort of a serial entrepreneur. And now I branched into like basically the men's self-help space. And I primarily teach guys how to get better in the bedroom, how to fix problems in the bedroom, how to perform under pressure in the bedround, how to get their old boy downstairs working properly so they can have a more fulfilling sex life and their partner can have a more fulfilling sex life. Right. And I think that one of the best ways for guys to kind of reclaim that masculine drive, that masculine vigor, that masculine approach to life is by, especially if they're already in a relationship, is by starting in the bedroom, because it's kind of the one place we're still allowed to be men without any real negative repercussions. And women really enjoy that. Women are craving that. I get DMs every day from women telling me, thank you for teaching men this. I have a collection. I have a whole folder of them on my Google Drive of just like screenshots of Instagram DMs of women saying, "Thank you for teaching guys this. Thank you for teaching guys this. I want to be in a relationship with a guy who listens to you." All these kind of messages, and I'm like, okay, cool. This is not just me like talking out my ass. There's a fundamental like vacuum here of the way that men and women should be relating to each other, especially in the bedroom. That's missing. And I think one of the main things to blame for that is feminism and things like the Me Too movement has got a lot of dudes shit scared of being passionate with their partner in the bedroom.
Right. And you're 100% on that. And I don't know if you know my story, but I got married very young at 21. And I got divorced after 16 years. So in 2016, I finally started dating. And I was like this bear who lived in like this habitat for his whole life. And I was ready just to go have fun, dude, and just fulfill every fantasy I wanted. And I did. And I remember just being friends with a lot of women because I worked in the corporate world space at the time. And a lot of women were telling me, how's the single world? And I was telling them all the crazy sex I started to have and all this other stuff. And all the women, like the first time I choked a woman, she was choking me. I'm like, what? I was with one woman since I was 21, dude. So I was like, what? So I learned as I went, and I adapted pretty fast. So I had a lot of fun, but a lot of married women were telling me, how's life? What's life out there? And I tell them, and they're like, you know what? My husband, I love him. He's a good man, but he does not satisfy me in bed. He's always very loving and tender. Are you okay, babe? Do you like that? Do you like that? And she goes, Rudy, I want to be fucked. I want my hair pulled. I want to be spanked, and I want to be dominated in bed. I'm a director in this corporate world. I make decisions all day. I do not want to make decisions when I go home, especially in the bedroom. And a lot of them started having affairs. I'm like, don't do that. Just get divorced. But ultimately, that's what they wanted. So what you're saying is true, 100%.
Bro, I've literally saved marriages from that.
Good. That's awesome.
I've stopped women from doing that, from seeking that thrill in another partner, and they'll stay with their husband because their husband starts listening to some of my advice. I've got screenshots like this, bro. And to me, that's like a guy can get like. There's two things going on there, right? Where a guy gets into that situation, let's say, and he's not giving his wife the kind of sex that she wants. One, it's like kind of like complacency.
Yes.
And a bit of, and honestly, a little bit of boredom on his half. Right, because there's this weird, kind of annoying dynamic in the male mind, at least for me. Maybe you can relate to this. Tell me if you relate to this. Where like, if you're with a woman, like you start a relationship with a woman, and it's exciting and it's passionate, and you have that you see her as a sex object. She's a sexual being. And then as you get to know her and you truly fall in love with her and you adore her and you appreciate her, she becomes less of a sexual object and more of like a motherly, like the potential mother for your kids. And you see her you start to see her in a different way. And it kind of takes away the fun and the excitement and the thrill of sex a little bit, because you don't want to sexually objectify that kind of woman. You know, you want to nurture and care and look after that kind of woman. But what that does, unfortunately, is it takes away that passion in the bedroom, and then she's missing out on that. Yeah. So I think guys do this to themselves, where they're like, it's the Madonna whore complex.
I did it. Yeah. Like I said, I was married 16 years, and when kids came in, you have children, by the way? Are you dad?
No, not yet.
Okay. Yeah. I have three. So they're amazing. And it's funny when kids come in, it's the most unconditional love you ever feel. I promise you that. And I forgot to be a husband, and she forgot to be a wife, and we were just parents. And over the years that just started happening, the kids took priority. And I always tell people, if you're going to get married, it's your spouse and then your kids. Don't put your kids above your spouse. Never forget that. That's the foundation of the family. And any marriage therapist will tell you the same thing. And the Madonna whore complex, I saw her as a mother, so sex immediately tanked. And we had a few years where it just was boring. And again, after a while, 10 years or so with the same woman, you get bored. Yeah. And if no one wants to explore other options, or they don't have the confidence to share their intimacies or their fantasies, it can be like a stagnant place. And just like you, I get emails, hundreds a month, of women saying, I love him, he's a good man, but he just is not doing it for me. What do I do? And what advice do you give them? Like, what do you tell the men to how to improve themselves? Because I'm glad you're doing that, because I've had a lot of female sex coaches on my podcast, and they're not promoting this, but they're saying as an option, they're saying a lot of people are having open marriages now, polyamorous marriages, where they're allowing each other spouse to go out and have sex with other people. There's rules set, but they can go have sex with other people, and it's working for a small minority. And some of them are promoting that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work for the vast majority of people.
I agree.
I mean, look, if it works for you, it works for you, man. It's your life. Personally, I don't share my women, but they share me. Does that make sense? So, what's the correct term? Is it
polyamorous relationships?
Polygyny or where there's multiple women and one man. Whatever my lexicon is.
Polygamy or something.
It might be polygamy. Yes, polygamy. Yeah. But basically, I think that truly does work. Primarily because it keeps the guy excited. It keeps the guy, in that state we talked about, where there's variety, there's excitement, there's options, and hey, like if everyone wants to play together, that's fantastic. But I think a woman who can bring other women to her man in a non-jealous way, in a non-insecure way, and realize that she is truly the queen in that situation when she does that. Like she's literally irreplaceable. Like try finding that. Like it's super hard to find a woman who is secure enough to do that, doesn't get jealous, and realizes her position won't be compromised, and she's able to bring another woman to her man. Immediately makes her the queen, and that keeps the excitement going. And oddly enough, like it keeps the woman. It might sound bad saying this, but it keeps her excited because there's a little bit of jealousy involved there, right?
Some like competitive nature stirs up, right, baby?
Yeah. When a woman is a little bit jealous, it's always a good thing for the relationship as a whole. When the man starts to get jealous, it's never a good thing for the relationship as a whole. Because as soon as the man starts getting insecure, the man starts getting, like thinking he's losing position, and she'll start to disrespect him, she'll lose interest in having sex with him, and then the relationship will fall apart. On the other hand, when the woman is a little bit jealous of the man, well then she's certain that she's picked the best option she can find, because she's jealous of the fact that other women are attracted to him in the first place. Right. He's happy because his woman's happy. Like she's happy because he's happy. He's happy because he's on top of he's king of the kingdom or whatever. And like he's kind of getting his ego satisfied by being, maybe he's flirting with women here and there, whatever. Maybe he's not necessarily cheating, but at least there's exposure to other women. Right. And so I think I personally think that's an ideal scenario. Maybe there's no sex involved. Maybe it's just occasionally flirting here and there. That might be all. But it's just enough to remind her that the man she is with is attractive.
Right.
And that's what allows that sexual spark to stay there.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you this, because I'm sure you have way more experience in this field than I do, with like having like maybe two women at once, or having that relationship where you're dating a woman and another woman's introduced, or maybe you've coached somebody, right? What's the success rate with that? Because on my side, I know of a few couples who were married since high school, right? And they introduced a woman. And on paper, every guy, that's our fucking fantasy. Yes, two women, that we want to do that. On paper, it's fine. But when you're in the situation, you start getting feelings. And ultimately, a friend of mine who did that, they allowed another woman into their bedroom. The wife ended up divorcing him because she fell in love with the woman. So isn't that insane? I'm like, what? That really fucking happens? Like, he was like, yeah. So, I mean, in your experience and people that you've coached, I mean, that sounds like fun on paper, but what is the success rate with that, the long term?
That scenario you just talked about, I think that's a very rare one. That's a very, very rare one where, like, with the woman with it. Because think about that, like, so either that woman has to be like, she was probably like bisexual, and now she's very, very, very much more like on the lesbian side of things. Or in that scenario, he was too in his feminine. He was being too much of.
Yeah, he is a male feminist, by the way. He is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there we go. Like he wasn't being like the leader in that situation. He wasn't being, quote unquote, masculine enough to direct that interaction with the two of them, to the point where they both respected him and they both saw him as the top dog.
Right.
If he was being too submissive and too supplicative, well then, surprise, surprise, his wife at the time stepped up and took the leadership role, lost respect for him, and then ran off with the other person in that threesome situation. So I think if you come at this from the correct first principles, then there's not going to be problems like that. And the first principles is you're the man, you're the leader, you should take responsibility, and you dictate the direction of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as far as like the success rate, have you seen this really help couples in the long run, or have you seen them like implode like this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it help a lot of like new relationships, because this is something that's a lot harder to introduce to people who are like in a long-term marriage, obviously.
Yeah.
But I've introduced this concept to a few younger guys, and whether or not they end up in like an actual like dedicated like throuple or something with multiple women, or whether it's just one woman. And they occasionally share another woman on the side. It's quite happy. It's quite happy. I've actually had my for some reason my Instagram reels and things have been going quite viral as of recent. And a friend of mine actually messaged me. He said, my girlfriend saw one of your Instagram reels on her feed the other day, and then it was about me talking about this kind of topic, and then she came up to him and was like, "Daddy, do you want multiple wives?" And he's like, "Yeah, I suppose I do." He's like, "Okay, cool." I'm like, ta-da! Like,
wow!
It's working. It's working. So get your woman to subscribe to follow me on Instagram, and then just let the algorithm do its job. But if she and because he didn't necessarily like bring the topic up, but I'd actually personally met her before, and so she knew I was an okay guy. I wasn't like some creep or some weirdo or anything like that. So we had a good understanding. And then when that came up on her feed and she saw it, she was like, maybe my partner is interested in something similar. I'm going to discuss it with him. And she was open to the idea. And it's a large part of it is kind of, because the problem with this is you're kind of fighting against like society in a way. You're fighting against like the current narrative. And the current narrative, let's be honest, is not really in the benefit of men. The current narrative, we live in I guess you could say, my friend Rolla Tomasi says, a female-centric social order. So everything is kind of engineered towards optimizing the female reproductive strategy. Let's say that, right?
Okay.
I mean, that's why we have rampant cuckoldry. That's why we have like what's it called, paternity fraud, like all over the place in the Western world, which is horrifying. Yeah. But so there needs to be some kind of a balance, right? And personally, I think the balance is understanding male nature, understanding true, like the male sex drive, understanding like that we like variety, and understanding that it doesn't mean we don't love our partner.
Right.
We can still have another woman on the side, and she doesn't mean it doesn't really mean anything to us. We're not gonna give her the house and the car. The primary partner is still going to get all the, she's still going to get the keys to the kingdom, and we're just going to have some fun on the side. And I think that keeps everyone happier in the long run, personally. So I've seen younger guys and guys my age be really successful with this.
Yeah, and it's definitely a paradigm shift because you have the social norms of like man and wife. That's it. You have this idea of what marriage is, and I will say that I will give a nod to the millennials and maybe Gen Z that they're doing more open relationships or maybe considering the idea as an option. As in my generation, if I brought that up to my ex-wife, I would get a fuck no. That ain't happening, or bringing somebody in. So I'm glad to see that they're at least exploring alternatives that were taboo at one point. And more like, let's at least consider it and talk it out. That's good.
And it's got to start from it's much harder to sort of bring this dynamic in after like a 10-year, 8-year relationship. Like,
right.
It's kind of got to get there. It's better to start these things at the beginning with honesty and like, because I'm honest. Like, and I've lost girls like this. Full disclosure. Like when I say, look, I want, I'm not going to be satisfied with just one woman.
Right.
Like, you love me and I love you, that's okay. And then they start with that understanding in mind, and eventually, like, okay, they realize it's not for them, and that's fine. Then we have to part ways, which is sad, but it happens. But then I fundamentally know what I want, and I fundamentally know what will make me happy in the long term, and what I'll be able to sustain in the long term for a relationship. Because I personally know that if I get into a monogamous relationship, because I have tried this in the past, I know that I will get too bored and I will take the relationship for granted, and the relationship will fall apart. Mm-hmm. Because for me, there's just not enough excitement there in that particular part of our relationship for me to keep that balance between her being a sexual being and being like a motherly figure.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
So.
And to piggyback off your point, when I was divorced, like, you go through hell, the worst experience you've ever been through, and then you survive it and you're a better man. I went out with the greatest confidence ever, and I knew what I wanted. And I think it's a rare thing for a man to know what he wants, to be vocal about it and honest, because when I was dating women, I said, I just want to have fun. I've never been single. I want to do things, and I want to do this and that, and I'm not ready to settle down. A lot of women left, but you know what? They respected me. And I ended up having like a friends with benefits or just a hookup on the side because they knew what I wanted. They knew there was no strings attached. And they love a man who's clear.
Yes.
And again, they'll respect your honesty, whether it's going to hurt them or not. And I think a lot of young men need to understand that. And don't be afraid of the loss. There's plenty of other women out there, but if you're true to yourself,
totally,
that's all you need, man.
That's exactly right. It's the correct attitude. Is like it's better to be completely honest and know exactly what you want. Yeah. Be upfront about that, because then it helps you filter down to find a more suitable partner, rather a lot of guys do not have that level of abundance so they will just take what they can get. They will just take what's available, and they'll compromise their own values. They'll lie, they'll truly lie about what they really, really, truly want. And that I don't think that's a great foundation for a relationship, personally. I think it's far better to come out of a relationship like being honest about your intentions, honest about the plan for the future that you have for yourself and for your partner, what you want out of life. And then you can build it together. I think that's far better.
I agree. And some of the emails I get from men and women, a lot of them were bisexual, and they've known they're bisexual their entire life. But then when they met somebody, they never vocalized that. They just kept it secret. Like, this is too good of a good man or woman. I'm not going to jeopardize it by, stirring up the pot. I'm just going to hide this part of me. And now they're 10 years in and they just feel trapped. And no one should be in that position. Like you said, if everybody was just had some balls and just was honest, and if it implodes, guess what? It wasn't meant to be. But now you can be true to yourself and find somebody who will meet you in that space.
Yeah. And let me be clear about this. I'm not anti-marriage either. I'm not anti, especially I'm not anti like religious ceremony marriage.
Right.
But I'm very anti like getting the government involved in a marriage, because I don't think like God comes before government. Like,
I agree.
And we flip that the wrong way around.
I totally agree.
Especially in America. As far as I'm concerned, the government should have absolutely no business poking its nose into your personal, intimate relationships. So if you get married, make it a purely religious ceremony. If you want to be monogamous and you want to be, if you're a religious person, by all means, go right ahead. There's no problem with that.
Right.
More power to you. But just keep the government's nose out of it, because by involving them and having them, intertwined in that, if you look at it really, if you look at like a marriage in terms of the government contract that has to be signed, what it really is the woman forcing the government to put a gun to the man's head and saying, you must support me or I'll pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. If you break it down, like eventually, like if you just walk through the scenario, eventually what will happen if he's, okay, let's walk through it right now. You know, you and a woman get married. Let's say you don't pay her, and then eventually like it breaks up or whatever. You don't want to pay her alimony. What happens if you don't want to pay her alimony? Well, she takes you to court. What if you don't go to court? Well, then the police rock up at your house. What if you refuse to go with the police? They're going to pull a gun out. What if you refuse to comply then? They're eventually going to shoot you. Mm-hmm. Like the ramification, it always eventually leads to a person putting a gun to your head. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the fundamental problem with having the government involved in marriage is like, why should any man, get with a woman long term who requires the government to do that to him in the first place? Right. She should not require the government to be, to use violent force to force him to provide for her. He should want to do that naturally anyway. He should want to look after her. If he doesn't, she's picked the wrong guy, fundamentally. So it's a bad choice. Right. So obviously there are women who will kind of coerce men, and we talk about gold diggers and things like that. But I don't think that's the average woman. And I think if the average woman really looked at like this scenario from the male perspective and what I just talked about, they'd probably realize, that's a bit of a shitty deal. Like why would I want the man that I love to be forced through violent coercion to provide and care for me and our kids? Right. I think I'd much rather he is naturally inclined to do that, and so she should be, far more selective in the kind of man she has kids with or starts a family with.
Bullseye, yeah, 100%. And again, I'm not anti-marriage myself either, but after being through one and seeing, you get married, and I was like that one friend who first got married, and all of a sudden all your other friends start getting married, and it's like this contagious, like, hey, he's doing it, let's all do it. So I've been there, done that. And I truthfully believe marriage is a beautiful thing, but we've made a joke out of it. It's a game show prize. It's people don't take it seriously. I think people nowadays want the Instagram pics and likes of the images of the wedding. People want the wedding. Women want the wedding, but they don't think about marriage. And marriage is fucking hard. It's hard. Life is hard. I mean, it's not just the woman; it's her parents, and then you have kids. I've had friends who had special needs kids, and that's just an other layer of just life it's even tougher, and it's not cut out for everybody, is what I'm trying to say. Marriage is only, I think, in my opinion, it's only cut out for a certain amount of people. Not everyone's wired for it, just like not everybody's meant to be a parent. Everybody can get married, but you're not cut out for it. Or you can have a kid, anybody can, but you may not be the best dad ever. So that's truly my opinion. And when I see young kids on social media saying, fuck that, I'm never going to get married, I don't blame them. Because all we see on social media is the viral videos, the hot takes, the ones that people share. And all they're seeing is divorce. Women file 80% of the time. Guys lose everything. And yes, that does happen. But I think if more people invested more time at the beginning instead of feeling pressured to get married at the very beginning, like take a couple of years to get to know the person. Getting married in under 6 months or 3 months is idiotic, in my opinion. You're gambling with your life. Get to know them, see him in all the seasons. Like, how does he? How does he react when he gets fired? When things don't go his way? How does she react when things don't go her way? If you were to get laid off, she's a stay-at-home mom. She's that woman with all the Louis Vuitton purses in the closet. If you get laid off, is she going to stay with you? Or no? Because there's this one story I tell here in Texas. There's these oil field jobs. You make 6 figures, but you're working hard. And I had a friend of mine who had this woman, a fucking 10. And her closet was like the ones you see on social media, all Louis Vuittons. Everywhere they went, she was just take a photo at the restaurant or the balcony of the hotel or anywhere. She was just drop dead gorgeous.
Red flags everywhere.
All the time. But everyone was jealous because we're all young and stupid. We don't know any better. But like, she's hot. Oh my God, she's a trophy wife. But he gets injured and messes up his back. And guess what? He can't work the oil fields anymore. And guess what she did? She left him.
Of course.
Yeah, because she loved the life he gave her, she didn't love him.
Yeah. It's not so unsurprising that. I mean, that's another test is like, so one of my best friends, when he got married, he's a very, very, very religious man, very Christian, very religious. Mm-hmm. And the way he got married to his wife, they were in Cancun on a holiday. He arranged it without her knowing. He found a priest. He found and then a witness. He literally said the day before, we're getting married tomorrow at like 12 o'clock. And she's like, okay. Basic, simple, bare bones religious ceremony. No bells and whistles, no Instagram moments, nothing. Maybe like one photo of the two of them like exchanging a ring, and that was it. And to me, that's and they are a perfect couple, perfectly suited for one another. And I know they're on their second child now. They'll have an amazing life together. But to me, that's a big test. Is like, could she handle not being the center of attention for a day? Like, because that's what you mentioned it before. They want to be, a lot of women today want to be the bride, not the wife.
Right.
Because it's about that one big day. It's if you look at you'll see this videos going viral on social media of these elaborate weddings and elaborate, the groom and the groomsman will do some elaborate dance routine or something for the bride, in front of the bride.
Insane.
Right?
It's all insane.
Like, if you look at that, what that truly is, it's a celebration for the female ego. That's all it is. It's got nothing to do with marriage. It's got nothing to do with God. Nothing to do with that. It's right. That entire ceremony is now based around the validation and the attention seeking and the ego of that woman. Mm-hmm. Okay, no, which there's no what that's how we have now defined weddings and marriage in the Western world. Is it's just this glorified ceremony based around her, not based around the potential future of a relationship or the relationship under God or the potential for a family. It's got nothing to do with any of that. It's right. Purely based around the attention-seeking validation part of the female ego. And so, surprise, surprise, like when that is what marriage is and that's what weddings are now, no wonder the women aren't like, they want to be a bride, not a wife, not a mother. Mm-hmm. It's not really surprising. So I think that's a very good test for guys. If you want to get married to a woman, and by all means, go right ahead. I encourage you to. Again, don't get the government involved in it. And two, second test, test number one, see if she gives a shit about that. Is she actually religious and wants to get married, or does she just want your money? Because that's a very easy test.
Yeah.
And then test number two is make it a completely bare bones ceremony, like maybe your parents and just you, and that's it. No bells and whistles, nothing elaborate, no video camera, maybe one photo, nothing spectacular, nothing she can show off about. Mm-hmm. If she can't accept that, well then, my friend, there's something bad there. There's some red flags popping up for me, because that's you're doing it for the wrong reasons then.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me asking this, obviously you're a well-known person, and you travel, you meet a lot of women, and you're successful in your own brand, and you've busted your ass to get here, right? I bet you can spot gold diggers a mile away, and you probably have like a filtering test of just like, is she legit or not? But it must be hard for a man in your position to know or trust a woman that comes into your life, man. Yeah,
I don't really my approach to spending money around women, let's say that much, is if I invite a woman to dinner, I'm paying. Yeah. Right. That's the way I look at it. If I invite someone to join me for the weekend, I'm paying for the taxi, or I'll fly her into town so we can go do something together. Right. To me, that is it's the same exact thing to me as paying for her Uber to the restaurant. Right.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
I'll pay for the logistics, and I'll pay for the date because I'm a gentleman and I'm in a position to do that. I'm comfortable financially, so that's my role. However, I don't go around buying purses and handbags for people. I don't go around paying for plastic surgery for girls and stuff like that. I don't do any of that kind of crap. It's but I'll pay for dinner, I'll pay for the drinks. Cool, because I consider that to be my job. And so, to me, it's very, very easy to spot a quote unquote gold digger. One, they don't really get around me in the first place. I think they kind of. I think I don't know if I deliberately filter this, or if my kind of social media kind of filters it for me. I don't really get hit up by that many gold diggers, honestly, because they don't because they'd be asking you for shit pretty much straight off the bat, and I think they can kind of tell that I already know the game because I've been in that kind of industry. Mm-hmm. So I've been friends with some of the best gold diggers on the planet, so I know I know the game, man. You ain't gonna pull a fast one on me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So it kind of filters itself in a way, and. I don't really need to worry too much about that. And obviously, there's a difference between a girl that I'm just going to have some fun with, and there's a difference between a girl that I'm okay, this girl could be a potential mother, and I'm I'm going to treat those two women very, very differently.
Absolutely.
From the very beginning as well.
Right.
And I can recognize that pretty easily off the bat too.
Whenever, and I don't know if you do this or not, but I remember when I was out there just having the time of my life, if somebody came around that like, oh, this may be legit, I didn't want to have sex the first night. I kind of like held off. I'm like, okay, because usually I'm pretty sure you've been in this experience where you meet a woman and it's great. You're just, the chemistry is just on fire. Then you have sex and then the emotions the next morning change. There's a different atmosphere now. Like, we moved too fast and we kind of ruined it. And there went that chance. But whenever I did meet somebody like, oh my God, this woman I totally respect. So I would just kind of hold off of that first night. Do you ever do something different? Like you said, you treat them different. Is that one of those tactics you do?
Yeah, I guess that's, it's probably unconscious for me doing that now at the point as well. But if I see a woman who I think is, okay, this girl has like real solid, like long-term potential, I'm going to approach it a lot slower. Then, and that's probably, and there's partly for her, but you're right, it's also partly for me to really concentrate on like vetting her and finding out as much as I can about her on that first date, because then I don't want to waste my time in pursuing something
right
that is like has no future on it, right? And I've gotten to this point now where I don't want to, if I see a genuinely good girl and who has potential, I don't want to add to her body count if I'm not going to be with her long term.
Makes sense. That's
kind of where I'm at now. Is like, so I'll use that first date or maybe a couple of dates to just try and vet her, find out more about her. And it's like, okay, if there's chemistry here, okay, now we can push things a bit further. But if there's not, I'm not interested in adding an extra body to her. I'm not interested in especially getting intimate with her and potentially having her fall in love with me when I know that there's not going to be a future here.
Right.
Because I just don't think that's...
Why do that to her? Yeah.
I don't think that's good karma. I don't think that's a good thing for men to be running around doing. And again, granted, and I know this sounds, this might sound misogynistic or whatever, but there's fundamentally two different types of women in this world. There's women that are for fun, and there's women that are for taking seriously.
Yeah.
And when it's a woman I've identified as someone who I could take seriously, I'm going to vet that, and I'm not going to try and add to her body count. But if it's a woman who I already know, and I can tell from her social media that she is, maybe a bit more of a party girl.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay, then I've got no, like, she's already decided that this is her life and this is her lifestyle. So I've got there's no like moral or karmic problem there. Mm-hmm. She already knows she's like the fun girl type. So okay, cool, we can have fun.
Yeah.
And maybe that will continue.
That's all it'll ever be. Right.
Yeah. It might only be once, or it might be a repeating thing, but it's not really going to be. I'm not going to have kids with this woman.
Right. And I love what you just said, because there's also no judgment from what I'm feeling on your side, because that's who she is. She's chosen that, and she knows who she is. So I'm just going to go have fun with her in that wavelength and not think of anything else. Or most guys, I think, judge a little too much.
And it's ultimately, and realistically, it's like, it's her choice. Like, she's chosen to live that way. That's fine. Mm-hmm. I think the problem comes in when women who, and this is kind of like the gold digger thing, right?
Right.
When women who have obviously lived that kind of fast party girl lifestyle, pretend to that all of a sudden, now I'm a good girl. Mm-hmm. Now I'm like wife material. And it's like, the unfortunate reality is that ain't the truth. Like, men and women are very, very different. Unfortunately, like, women do get the harsh reality of the world that we live in. The harsh reality of nature is that women do get judged on their, sexual past, on their promiscuity. Men really don't, honest to God. Like, look at a guy like me, man. I've been paid to do this sort of thing on camera for about, I was doing that for like a better part of a decade. And it's like, that has zero impact on my ability to find a really good, wholesome, religious partner. Mm-hmm. But the other way around is a very, very different story.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So you mentioned body counts. I'll ask you this: do body counts matter?
I mean, the actual number, you're never going to know what the actual number is anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Although I did see that one of my friends, he posted this on Twitter today, I believe. This is actually, I'm going to try this out because this is this was a genius insight. He said,
okay.
He said, if you want to know roughly what a woman's body count is, ask her this question. ask her how many bodies would be too many for a guy for you to consider dating.
Ah, okay.
And if she says, oh, if a guy had 50 bodies, that'd be too much. Then that means that her body count is probably somewhere around 40, 45.
Yeah.
If she
I was
says
thinking
100,
8, 9, or 5 or something like that, then she's a pretty much decent girl. Yeah.
So because women are solipsistic, they fundamentally view the world through their own lens, more so like primarily through their own perspective. So they're going to answer that question. They're going to kind of tell on themselves a bit when you ask that question, and she's actually going to give you a very, very rough ballpark of her actual body count. I thought it was a genius insight, so I'm going to steal that and start using that.
I'm going to use that too. I'm going to use that.
Right, but the actual number itself, I don't think is as significant as like how she behaves around you and for you.
Right.
Like if she, you could have a girl who's got like a body count of 2, but if her ex-boyfriend was way cooler than you, if he was a more successful guy than you, she ain't gonna treat you the way she was treating him. Mm-hmm. She ain't gonna treat you as good as she was treating him. And I would fundamentally much rather a woman treat me like I'm the best option she has ever had. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now I know that's not realistic for every single guy. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's going to be some compromises, here and there, but that's the ideal you should be aiming for. Is she treats you like you're the best choice she's ever made?
I agree. And it's funny, the whole body count thing. Again, I'm an older guy, and I get how in a young man's mind, if you're like 20, 25, that's a big deal. Oh, and these videos started going viral. I'm like, well, how are you ever going to know? No woman's ever going to be truthful. They don't come with a Carfax or like a title. No. Like we can go back and check. You're never going to know the truth. So, I mean, why is that? Why ask? And I've never, like, to your point, I've never asked that question or even thought about asking it on a first date. But if I was going to judge, and I hate using that word, I kind of judge them by how they carried themselves and how they spoke with me, what they posted on social media. How they spoke about the previous relationships. If every guy was just ain't worth a shit, well then, okay, all right. But a woman's character, behavior, and how she speaks and what she does for a living, that can give you an idea, or, in my opinion, versus if she's just a party girl all the time, that's a totally different other scenario.
Yeah. Things like if a girl has like basically ADHD, if she is, if her attention is especially when you're around her, if she's very, very, if she doesn't actually give you, if it's literally just the two of you there and she can't give you her attention, that to me, that is a big red flag that a woman has been exposed to, like, let's say lots of like high stimulus environments. So like, big party atmosphere, possibly lots of drugs involved in that, obviously lots of attention from guys. Like, if she can't just sit there and be present with a guy, that's a pretty giant red flag.
I agree. And, let me turn this around on you, because I want to go back to the past. Let's go back to the very, very beginning of your career. So I think I read a Wikipedia article on you, and I wonder if it's correct or not, but you said
Wikipedia? I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff for you out there, man. But before you were in the porn industry or adult star, right? You were escort first, right? Or what's the proper term? I don't want to say anything that offends you. I was going to say gigolo, but it's probably the right one.
It's an escort. High class male companion is the way you brand yourself.
Okay.
But basically like rich, like 6-figure plus businesswomen would come to me, mid to late 30s. They'd come to me looking for like a dinner date, and then maybe something a bit more intimate after the dinner date in the hotel room. That's basically the way things would play out. How
did you get there? How did that start?
Well, it's in Australia, it's decriminalized, so you can actually advertise. Like, there's forums and things.
I didn't know that.
where you can advertise that in Australia. So I only ever did that in Australia because of the legality of it. Yeah, and I was. The way that started, I was in the swingers scene, actually. I was in the swingers scene in Australia as a single guy. I would get invited to parties and things by other women. And in that scene, there's a lot of crossover, and a lot of women in that scene, because they have a high sex drive, they would also be escorts. And they would tell me, hey, you should try this, you'd be pretty good at it. You should try this, you'd be pretty good at it. And I heard that a few times, and I was like, you know what? Stuff it, let's try it. And I was in really good shape. I took some good photos. I knew how to dress well in a suit. Put all that together, started advertising, and then started getting bookings. And I was like, no way. Never thought in a million years that what's the dynamic that everyone understands with men and women? It's like, okay, the men is the financial, source, and the woman is the sexual source, right? Yeah. And to have that dynamic flipped completely, it's quite eye-opening. It was very eye-opening for, especially with the demographic of women that I was, encountering, which is women in their mid to late 30s, 6-figure plus, like career women. Mm-hmm. You realize, they're missing intimacy a lot. Literally, the highlight of the evening for them wasn't necessarily even the sex. Although, like, if my job was to make that sex like a connection and passionate and make her feel beautiful again. But if the date went really, really well, it was always because during the dinner component, I'm just giving her my undivided attention, and I'm being genuinely curious about her and her life. Okay. Because she doesn't have that anymore. Because she's, let's say she's past her prime or whatever, or maybe she's the kind of men that she wants to be with are not interested in her. They're interested in the younger woman. Mm-hmm. And so she no longer has a guy who is giving her that kind of attention and is genuinely curious about her the way they were 5-10 years ago.
Gotcha. I have to ask this, man, because one thing I noticed, again, I'm not comparing my life to you in any way, shape, or form, but again, being married 16 years and then going out having fun, I needed to be attracted to them. There had to be some chemistry for me to perform. Not that I couldn't, but for me to really enjoy it, that spark and the attraction needed to be there. So as a professional, like in this industry, at that point, if you weren't attracted to them, how did you fake it? How did you turn it on? Did it ever happen? I'm thinking about that Deuce Bigelow movie that came out in the late 90s. Like a totally unattractive woman who paid you like, well, fuck, here we go. I have to do my job. So you have to have the ability to find something beautiful about any woman. Oh, good point. And that's what I noticed when I started meeting other dudes who are in the pornographic industry or who are in the escorting game. Mm-hmm. That's one thing we all had in common. Every guy in those industries, they have the ability to find something beautiful about any woman. You put basically any woman in front of them, and they'll find something, and it'll be like a laser. They'll just laser-like focus in on that one thing, mm-hmm. and that will allow them to stay present and to stay aroused and to stay in the moment and enjoy themselves and enjoy mm-hmm. themselves enough to make sure that she's enjoying herself. Of course, right. Mm-hmm.
But it's there was one occasion where there was. Yeah, it was a bit too much, if I'm going to be honest. But apart from that, I was pretty consistent. It's my secret superpower, I guess you could say. Yeah. I'll find something. I'll find something beautiful about that woman.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like the eyes or something like that, or her smile, something like that. Focus on the eyes.
And you know what? A lot of the time, it can be that. A lot of the time, it's the smile. A lot of the time. You can get a woman to genuinely smile. I don't think there's a woman on this planet who doesn't look beautiful when she smiles.
I agree. I totally agree. Like a woman could be beautiful, right? Body wise, all that. But I think it's really sexy when a woman has a sense of humor and she can smile. I love that. She can make me laugh. Like, holy shit! Like, here we go, man. I'm taking these boxers off. So you were like an escort, and then you went to the industry, right, and started filming. Because word of mouth, according to the article, there's word of mouth about your performance and how great you were. So you decided, hey, let me go into this field, and that's how that happened, right? Yeah,
basically, it's same thing. I was swinging scene and escorting, and then in the escorting scene now, and I was having, multiple women hit me up and be like, "Yeah, you should try doing this. You'd probably be good at this too." And then you just hear that enough, and you're like, "Okay, well, maybe I should give this a try." Okay. And the industry is very, very tiny in Australia, so I started out there and got my feet wet, and then moved on to bigger and better industries. Went to the UK, worked out in England for a while, and then went to Europe and worked in Europe for a while, and then eventually made my way to America and Los Angeles, which is like the biggest part of the industry,
the capital, I guess.
Yeah, the capital. Silicon Valley, not Silicon, Silicon Valley, and ended up working out there for a number of years. And had a good fun time, but that's it was a lot more networking than people realize. Like it's kind of funny when people. I obviously get a fair bit of hate on the internet, as anyone does as they start to grow a little bit.
Okay.
And there's a lot more parallels between that industry and like business than you would realize. And
what way?
one of the main ones is networking and how to actually get work, especially as the guy in that industry. Like where you're not the product. The lady's the product. She is the product. Mm-hmm. She's the reason they're buying. She's the reason the customer's subscribing or watching the video or whatever. You're just like in the background, kind of making it all work. You're like the engine that's just hidden under the hood that no one really sees, that makes the whole car run. And so the only real way you can get work is by having a good reputation, by doing the job well, performing on time, being professional, and networking with the right people, understanding like the social map of that industry, and like, okay, this guy knows this guy, and this guy's really important, or this girl worked for this director over here, so if I do a good job with her and she likes me, she'll recommend me to him, and then he knows this guy, and so you start to develop this like kind of mental model of how to level yourself up in an industry like that. I think that is a lesson that can be used in any industry.
Yes, I definitely agree. And one thing I respect about you is that first off, the transition from that life to a businessman creating a brand, that must be very difficult for a lot of people. But the fact that you embrace it, it's part of you, and you've learned something from it, and you carrying that to other men, that's awesome. But you see, like I believe, what's her name, Mia Khalifa, I believe is her name, where the transition isn't so great, where they're speaking ill about the industry and they're like condemning their acts, and you can see the backlash from the fans. It can be difficult, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and that's kind of ironic because she still does an OnlyFans and still makes
I didn't know that. Wow.
Off of her stage name, not her real name either.
Yeah,
that is the funny part. Like if the industry was so bad to you, why do you still use your stage name? Mm-hmm. You know. Because that's the thing that made you money. That's the thing that made you famous in the first place. Right. That's the thing that gets you all this attention. Now, I don't really shit on the industry itself. Like I enjoyed my time. Like I had a great time. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But what I do say is that if a guy has any problems in their bedroom, he should stop watching porn. Mm-hmm. And I tell this to a lot of young guys, especially because a lot of young guys have a problem. For a start, they're on their phones all the time. They're like the TikTok brain is one of the things we call it. They're endlessly scrolling, and then porn on top of that. Man, you're setting yourself up for failure if you are habitually using pornography, especially as a young guy, especially as a teenager, when your hormones are rampant, your brain is still developing.
Dude, yeah,
it's terrible. It's like any other vice. That's kind of the way I see it. It's like smoking, it's like drinking, like gambling, whatever. Some people can use it, and that's no problem at all. They can do it occasionally. I don't mind I go to the craps table every now and then when I'm in Vegas, have a good time with my friends out there, and I do that I might do that like once a year and have a good time. Like on the weekends, if I'm not drinking, I'll enjoy a cigar. Whoop-de-doo. It doesn't take over my life. It doesn't ruin my life. But and there's some people who can consume pornographic content. They can consume it with their partner. They can consume it with their wife, and they can both enjoy it and add a little bit of spice to the bedroom.
Yeah.
And there's other people who can consume it, and it will destroy them, and it will ruin their life, take away a ton of motivation, take away their drive, their discipline, and just screw up their head. And so I just try to be honest about it, you know, and I try to be as impartial as I can be about it. Because I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy myself when I was in the industry, honestly.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. And you're right, because I can only imagine, because I remember when I was a kid, you know, a porn wasn't as accessible as it is today. I mean, you had the scrambled channels back in the old days, and then you had like the Playboys behind the counter at the gas station. So we had the Sears catalog or something, right? Or that one tape of us friends shared, and we had to take turns with it. But dude, if I was a young kid now with everything in my hand, I bet kids are seeing things I didn't see until I was in my 40s. Yep. But I mean, it's so there. And I didn't know this, but again, as I speak to coaches and sexologists, like there's a pandemic, I guess, of young men in their late teens and 20s who are having ED, erectile dysfunction. Yep. Because they just grew up with pleasuring themselves with their phone. And it's gotten so severe. I remember this one woman said, she wanted me to ask you this. I'm going to ask this question because the only way her husband can orgasm is if he watches her through his phone. Like she has to be performing and finishing him off. He has to hold the phone up, look through the phone to see her performing to get off. Yep. And and it's insane. And she wanted me to ask you, what is the best way from a man's standpoint to bring up, this ED problem with a husband or like a boyfriend?
Yeah,
I know.
It's a rough one too, because coming from her, it's like he already knows he's got a problem, and like the more it could really be it could be like an avalanche, right? If she brings it up in the wrong way, it could make it way worse. Because now he is even more insecure about it, because he's aware that she's aware, and she's aware that, and she's bringing it up to him. It makes it even more insecure, and just goes deeper and deeper into his subconscious.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, and it sounds like, this guy definitely needs to fix that for a start. That's a definitely a porn habit thing that needs to be like reset. I mean, from a practical standpoint, I'd say like they need to he needs to kind of reset his brain and reset his relationship towards sex, and typically towards like orgasm. And I mean, if I was going to prescribe him just off the top of my head something to do, I'd say, okay, let's start by going like, let's just go cold turkey on all pornographic material for a start. Let's try and go cold turkey on social media as well, and like a mobile phone usage, to try and give your dopamine receptors a bit of a reset. Yeah, I'd say give it a few, like maybe like a week with no actual intercourse with your partner, just so you can kind of build up a bit more. Let's say blue ball yourself a little bit, and build up that kind of tension, that sexual tension between you and your partner again. And then from her perspective, one of the things she can do is to then after like a week's break of no sex at all, that first sexual encounter, don't make it like a super like aggressive pornographic type of interaction. Just lay him down, and she can just tease him, and slowly and essentially like increase the stimulation, so that she can basically tease an orgasm out of him. And what that will probably do is completely reset his relationship towards sex and towards intimacy with his partner. And then of course, then later on you can start getting more aggressive and doing more fun and exciting things. But I think fundamentally he needs to like learn to relax more, because ED is because the erection is a relaxation response. People don't really understand this. Like, your blood vessels have to dilate and relax in order for them to fill with blood, and that's how the chambers in your penis cause it to expand. All the blood vessels are relaxing, and so it fills with blood, and you get an erection. So you have to be relaxed, in a relaxed state of mind, to do it in the first place. So if you have an erectile dysfunction problem, if it's a mental side of things, it's actually performance anxiety. That's the two fundamentally different things. But let's just, for the sake of argument, let's just stick with the one definition. He has a relationship towards sex that is somewhat anxious and tense, and that needs to be changed into a relaxed arousal. And that's where she can definitely help. She can definitely help with the relaxation side of things, and making sex less performative on his part, and taking the pressure off of him, and making it more about him and his enjoyment, and then he can learn to relax and appreciate her presence.
Right. That's great advice. And it's like anybody. Let's say if you're an alcoholic, how do you approach an alcoholic who's got that vice, right? Like, I don't have a problem, and then it just implodes, and how that can just go south really fast. So, and it's funny, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, because I remember when I started dating, like I said, I was with one woman for 20 years if you round up. And I remember just dating, and a lot of women, I remember, were so accustomed to using their vibrator, I couldn't get them to orgasm. So they were just using that tool for like a year, and I'm like, well, let's work on this. And then I did some research. You had to reset the clitoris and just like stop using it for a few weeks, and let's work this out. I finally was able to get her. So it was like a goal of mine. I had to do this, man. But yeah, women, I'm pretty sure you've seen this. Like, if they use toys too much, too often, it's the same thing.
Exactly the same thing. Exactly the same problem. Yeah, they're using like industrial powered jackhammers on their clitoris.
Like, come on, we can't keep up with that. Come on.
The male tongue or the male penis cannot keep up with that. It doesn't have they don't have the function that allows it to do this. We can't like change directions and then have it vibrate and do all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's almost unfair. Like, come on, man, we can't do that.
Yeah, look, I ain't got a problem with women masturbating, but in actual fact, when women masturbate more, they tend to orgasm easier.
Okay.
However, that is masturbation with with their hands or with a dildo. Not necessarily, not with it's the vibrators in particular that can destroy the nerves and the sensitivity around the clitoris, especially these really, really high powered vibrators. So there's a balance there. But no one's talking about that. Everyone's talking about the dude stuff. No one's talking about
really?
Women destroying their own clits. Yeah,
that sounds like a great video idea. We got to do. And real quick, one topic I want to talk to you about, because again, I've been watching your videos for quite some time, and I saw about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, you did a video, Who's Trash in Bed? And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, I bet he's going to get a lot of crap from this. But I watched the video, and I'm pretty sure it's probably one of your most popular videos. But after watching it, again, you weren't saying like they sucked. You were rating them on a very professional scale, a metric. But did you get any shit from that? Did you get any shit from that?
You know what's funny? That video was up for like a year or two, and I only just got shit for it.
Oh, okay.
Only like the last month. Because we're like, look, think of it this way, right? YouTube is primarily dudes.
Yes.
And self-help content is also primarily dudes. Mm-hmm. So the women in my prior industry, they don't consume self-help material. So they never come across this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Unless they're deliberately typing like my name in and then looking for something specific.
Right.
Yeah, because I don't, the names are not in like the titles or anything like that.
Right.
So they were never even exposed to it. And think of the overlap, right, between like guys who are like super fans of porn stars and like religiously follow them on Twitter, and the guys who men who consume my content. It's very, very little overlap between those two audiences.
Right.
Because the kind of guy who's going to sit there and religiously follow a porn star on Twitter is not the kind of guy who's going to come to my YouTube channel and be like, okay, I have an erectile dysfunction problem. How do I fix it?
Right. Exactly.
They're fundamentally the different guys. Hopefully, eventually, these guys will realize that if they have any problems, they will come. They are welcome to come over and learn some stuff from me. But that doesn't really happen that much. Typically, it's guys who like are a bit more self-conscious, self-aware, and into self-improvement, who will find my material. So there's not been that much, honestly, God, not been much flack from it.
Well, it was very insightful. It is like who has done this? I think you're the very first to have done this. I've never seen another video with somebody who's retired to share like, hey, this is where I rank them. And it was all legit like metrics that you would go off. It wasn't like something like insulting. So I was like, holy shit. I wonder if he's going to get canceled by this.
I guarantee they'll find it insulting. I guarantee they will.
Yeah.
And I didn't even really want to do the video, but the guy who was helping me run my YouTube channel at the time, this younger guy, who was like, "Bro, you've got to do this because it'll blow up." He was correct. Fair credit to him. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, and this will be the last question I have in that industry piece, but for all the young men who see the life you've had and porn in itself as the ultimate fantasy, like I'm gonna do whatever I can to be there because it's what more or less every guy wants, quote unquote. But what are some like advice would you give a young man who's aspiring to go in that field? Is it all that's cracked up to be, or what would you tell him?
Yeah, it's not all it's cracked up to be, bro. And the pay is crap. The pay is shit. Mm-hmm. So as a guy, it's really, really, you're still trading the time for money. Look, to be fair, like I'm just being honest. Like it's a load of fun. You'll have a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you're not really you're not gonna make a lot of money unless you're like, same with most industries, but especially this industry. It's a real like exponential curve. Like the top like 0.01% are going to make most of the money. So you have to be like a legit superstar mm-hmm. to really pull in big bucks. And even then, you're still trading your time for money. You're not leveraging, in terms of like a business. You're not really leveraging yourself that much. So mm-hmm. you're very much capped at the women. On the other hand, can earn a shitload more just because their audience is massive.
Right.
But
right.
even then, they're still trading their time for money. Even the women are still trading their time for money a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. All these girls who you see making millions of dollars doing OnlyFans, they're still spending like hours and hours a week producing content.
It takes time. Right, yeah.
It still takes a lot of time. And I have to spend time creating content as well. No problem at all. But like, I much prefer the feel that like I'm a lot more fulfilled in my life now because I'm actually helping men.
Yes.
And I think Elon Musk had a quote which was something like, the amount of money you make is going to be directly proportionate to the complexity of the problems that you solve for people. So
Okay.
I mean, he's literally like building rockets to send us to Mars and stuff. So like, and he's taken over Twitter, made it like the best news source on the planet now, the most impartial news source on the planet now. Mm-hmm. So that man deserves all the money he has. And since I've taken my life away from like how can I satisfy myself in my own, say perverse pleasures, right? The hedonistic side. Yeah. And I've changed my direction to how can I help other men and how can I help them overcome problems. And in particular, like some of the most insecure problems men have, honestly, it can be one of the most devastating problems a guy can have, where like not being able to get it up in the bedroom can really fuck with a guy.
Yeah.
Because that thing between our legs kind of dictate, like, it's a really anchor to like our masculinity,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And whether it works or not can have a real impact on your self-confidence. So it's because I've been able to help a lot of men that I am now in a very, very good financial position. And so I would say, look, would I genuinely advise a guy to do it? Probably not. Probably not. Honest to God, probably not. Unless, and I know there's been a couple of guys who've actually done this. Unless you've made your millions and you're like a dude in his 30s and you're like, you know what, I've done like the money thing I've got handled. Mm-hmm. I'm curious about this. Sure, hit me up. I'll help you get into it. But for like a career path as a young guy, you've got to understand, man, it will massively limit your ability to gain employment elsewhere. After the fact, it's forever. Your digital footprint is forever. You'll have trouble getting bank accounts. That's a big thing that no one ever talks about.
Really? Oh, wow. Okay.
That's shocking. A lot of trouble getting bank accounts. You'll get bank accounts shut down if they find out that you are your stage name or whatever.
Wow.
So that'll definitely happen. So there's a lot of ramifications for getting into it. So, and obviously. In terms of like starting a family, there are actually a bunch of dudes in the industry who have families and have wives and stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be a bit harder, I think, for you to find wife material, shall we say, if you're exclusively, sort of dating within that field, that area. So,
mm-hmm. yeah, I totally. And I saw your video with Johnny Sins on that. I saw your video. You said if you date somebody within that field, I saw your video on Johnny Sins on what happened with him, or his girlfriend was in the industry and all that, and how that can just end bad in that sense. It backfired on him. I mean,
he had it perfect. He had it like he had 10 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned, like in terms of like life setup. And then kind of feminism got in the way, and I think he has a little bit of a maybe he's a little bit feminist in a way. He sort of let that kind of creep in.
Really? Oh, wow.
And he let that. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that would have made him think, oh, it's okay for her to go and shoot with other dudes.
Yeah.
That like kind of equalist, blank slate equalism kind of mindset. And then it ruined it. So, yeah.
They did.
It's unfortunate.
I got a couple more questions before we end, but this next one, I really wanted your opinion on this because there's a lot of coaches out there. And we mentioned very early in the beginning that there's this lack of leadership and mentors for young men, and they're looking for guidance and help. And I've seen a huge surge in female coaches. What are your thoughts with female coaches, and should a young man reach out to a woman to guide him to be a man and teach him those ways?
Not when it comes to being a man. I don't think so. No. I mean, by all means, if she's talking about sex and intimacy, or like just relationships in general, she might be able to give you a few nuggets of gold here and there purely from a female perspective. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it is going to be solipsistic. It is going to be from her individual perspective. Women typically do not give great advice for the generalities. They tend to give advice that is very, very specific to their unique circumstance and their unique like worldview and experience. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, in terms of, and obviously they don't have a penis, so that makes it a bit harder for them to give advice on that specific topic.
Yeah.
But just from what I have consumed, in terms of women who are trying to give a bit more advice to guys, a lot of it is... My friend Rollo Tomasi uses a phrase called building a better beta. Like... And it's never coming from women in their early 20s either.
Good point.
It's always coming from women who are in their like 30s. There's no 19-year-old girl who's like a 10 out of, who's like a stunning 10 out of 10 running around telling men how to be men, because she's dating the guys who are men.
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
She's hanging out with them because she's attracting them in the first place. So I think, I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I don't think they particularly give great advice to men. I think men have been exposed to female opinion and female advice too much. Men need more opinions of men. Men need to get more opinions and perspectives from men that they either respect, or they can learn something from, a unique skill set, or they have from a guy who has lived an experience that they're curious about, who's lived an experience that gives them a unique insight onto the world, or who has lived a life or lives a life in some way that they are jealous of. Because then you can learn from them. Then you can learn. You can take what's relevant, discard what is not relevant, and then forge a path of your own.
I agree. And I think that it's not just young men who should reach out for that type of mentor. I think even older men like myself, when things started really kind of blowing up for me on the social media side, I did seek out a mentor, like someone here local in San Antonio, and the guy's a millionaire. And I'm like, well, teach me. I had no idea, because I come from nothing, dude. My parents picked cotton in Oklahoma, so I'm a first generation of anything. So like, teach me, dude. I need to learn this stuff. So I think mentorship and guidance is needed. You should never stop learning. I don't care how old you are. You should always learn to adapt and evolve. And I think young men need to look out for that. And women, like you said, some nuggets, like, hey, this is what the mindset of how a woman works, dating tips. But when it comes to like guidance of being a man, what's masculine, I agree. You should stay in the male spectrum. That's definitely needed. And my last question to you is this. My platform really kind of blew up when I shared a mistake, because that's more or less what my platform is grounded at. I'm divorced, right? I learned from my mistakes. I'm a better man for it. I have a great co-parenting relationship with the ex-wife. Her husband's an awesome dude. We all get along great. I'm engaged. I have the woman that I've always wanted, a feminine woman. My God, dude. First feminine woman I've ever met at 43. And it changes you, man. It's like you want to go conquer villages for her and bring her pelts and treasures, because it just triggers something in you, dude. But my life turned out great because of the mistakes I made, and I learned from them. So my question to you and all my guests is this. In your life, what's one of the biggest mistakes you've made, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I think one of my earliest mistakes was actually with my first business. I used to run this like an underwear, let's just call it an underwear business, and like really basic mistake that I made was I had this early mentor, and he absolutely hated the book The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. Don't know if you've ever heard that book. So I actually read that book. That was what got me started into entrepreneurship, because it creates this very romantic image of what your life can be like. And the mistake I made was thinking that was taking an approach towards business in my 20s that was not busting my ass. That was more based around doing as little as possible and having as much free time as possible, which you can only really get to if you bust your ass. And I think I've had to unlearn a lot of that stuff that I started with, and I understand now where my first mentor was coming from. I had to unlearn a lot of that stuff that I got from that book, or like at least the attitudes towards building a business that I got from that book, to finally get to the point now where if I actually want to, I don't have to work this week. I can actually live that kind of life. But I liked working now. I enjoy it. I fundamentally really enjoy it. And it's not because I particularly like filming YouTube videos or I particularly like writing emails. It's just I get a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction from achieving things and from solving problems. So I think that was probably the biggest mistake I made, was in my early 20s. My life I could have been a completely different direction, honestly, now, if I'd taken a very different approach towards entrepreneurship and building a business than I had done in my early 20s.
That's rock solid, man. Totally rock solid. Like, I'm just going to end it there, dude. That was perfect, man. Stirling Cooper, man. This was an absolute pleasure. Like I said, there's a lot of influencers out there. I mean, the States, here in the U.S., there's so much division and hate. I'm not an advocate for that. I'm always speaking, I'm giving advice that I would give my son, that I do give my sons and my daughter. I want to give out advice that's going to help men become men, and that what they didn't hear. And I appreciate what you're doing out there in just saving marriages, as you just said earlier. You're doing good, man. And I totally respect the hell out of that. And thank you for being on the podcast, dude.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate that.